And welcome to the SpartanMag.com VCast. Jim Carponi, Paul Konerdijk, Rocket Arena, Cleveland, Ohio, the site of Sunday's second-round NCAA tournament game. Michigan State against New Mexico, the champions of the Mountain West Conference. They defeated Marquette on Friday. Michigan State, of course, defeated Bryant. Second round, Tom Izzo seemed really comfortable today. At the press conference, you can tell this is what he plays for, this is what he works for, and even a little bit more sharp-tongued and curmudgeonly, I think, because he knows they got a chance to do some things. If Michigan State were playing, if they had like that Zion Williamson or like a number one seeded North Carolina getting ready for this one, he might be a little bit more warm and fuzzy. New Mexico's good. Iowa State's good. Ole Miss is good, but there's no like albatross hanging above them that makes you think that this is going to be a tough ceiling to break through. They might lose on Sunday, but they have a chance to go further. You were in the Michigan State locker room today. Was it before practice or after?
Before practice.
So I'll ask you a little bit about what you saw there, but I guess that's what I'll ask you about that right now. In the locker room, what was your sense on the mood of the team today?
Well, I think the mood of the team is they're tired, man. They played late last night. Like a lot of those guys, I asked them like what time they got to bed. Like a lot of those guys were 2:33, 3:30. I mean, it was a physical game, so they went to sleep right away. But it takes. I mean, we got home. We got back to the hotel like late. After doing some work.
What was it, about 4 or so? What time?
Yeah, 4. But they're watching film. They're getting their introductions in New Mexico, and they started because of the win the weekend type deal, like the Michigan State does. They were already had some introductions to New Mexico. They didn't really get a chance to watch them much in person because they were kind of wanted to go through their thing and
because they had to play.
They had to play, and you had to get in the right mindset. I wonder too if they'd watched New Mexico a little bit, if that would have helped them keep the line in the cage a little bit. But I don't know. But the thing is, they got to look at New Mexico. Michigan State's leaning on its system of one-day prep. There's a lot of confidence in the locker room in that, but they know that New Mexico is a good team, and there's no taking them lightly. I think that they feel relaxed in that they got a hurdle out of the way in Bryant, a tough hurdle. We talked about that last night, the physicality. You got a lot of guys on the team that got their first taste of NCAA tournament experience. A lot of other guys that got their first taste of being, like in a Batman or Robin role in the NCAA tournament. And these guys are eager to take the next step, and they're eager to get work done, and they're not taking New Mexico lightly. And when you look at the roster, there's a good reason why. There's some good players on that New Mexico roster, and it's going to be like. I'm not going to say it's going to be like playing a Big Ten team, but it's not going to be dissimilar from playing a major conference team.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a team that's, 27-7. When you play the best team from the Mountain West, a team that went 17-3 in that conference, battle-tested team. You mentioned about Izzo, or Michigan State, the first NCAA tournament experience as a starter for Kohler, as a player for Jeremy Fears, even though he's a redshirt. Jace Richardson even, and Izzo said that some of those guys, Kohler, like we said last night in the VCast, was too amped up. And Jace Richardson, as Izzo said, missed a couple shots he usually makes. Izzo says no matter how much you tell them it's a little bit different. And Izzo said coming down the stretch, he thought that Michigan State played as tough an eight-game stretch to end a season as he's ever been around, playing at Maryland in some really noisy environments. But even those things did not prepare Michigan State for the stage and just the feeling, the psychology of the NCAA tournament. He's hoping that they'll be by that a little bit now. Doesn't mean you're going to win all those games, but that particular part of that hurdle that they need to clear in order to play the first game. When they say the first game's the toughest, they don't necessarily mean it's the toughest opponent, but the toughest to come out and perform.
Mentally,
we saw that last night.
It's a mental thing because, I asked those guys, what makes like the guys that hadn't experienced it before, what makes it so difficult? And it's the finality. It's the realization that if you don't do your job, and you have a limited amount of time to do it, that you're going home and your season is ended. And that's like a different type of psychology, even than in a conference tournament. For a power conference team like Michigan State, who is going to get in that large bid no matter what, usually, they don't have to win their conference tournament to get the NCAA tournament. And even in the Big Ten tournament, they wanted to beat Wisconsin. There's a pride level there, but it's not a final type thing where you start catching yourself thinking, I'm playing my last game with these seniors, with Jaden Akins or something like that, or what might have been. And you see this there's a lot of ebbs and flows, and everything is more emotional in the NCAA tournament.
Sure.
So you get punched, it feels harder. You gotta dig back out of it. And I think one of the things that I talk, like even the veteran players that are in that Batman Robin or Alfred type role this year. It's the weight of the team on your shoulders. It's different. It's different for Cohen Carr being a primary type guy last night than it was last year when he was coming in and playing 10 minutes. It's different for Carson Cooper, who is expected to be like one of the best defensive players on the team.
I think he's the Alfred of this team.
Yeah, but he is. I think he's more. I think he's the most underrated player in the conference.
Alfred was the most underrated player in the Batman series.
Yeah, because he was logistical, and he had to get it done. And
he helped out when the time came.
Well, he's the guy that he has to organize all the crap. But I'm going to stop with the Batman bull crap. And
Cooper's more of a physical specimen than Alfred was.
A little bit, but I think sometimes we underestimate that in Alfred. But Cooper's a guy. He's one of the best defensive bigs in the country, and I feel comfortable saying that he's one of the most versatile defenders in the country, and he can do a lot of different things. And in the most important games, with guys that have a combination in pick and roll type stuff, ball screen type stuff, they absolutely need to have them. And then there's people that there's going to be people watching this VCast that are going to disagree with what we're saying because they do every single time, and I don't care. Without guys like that, without guys like Draymond Green and with the Golden State Warriors, they don't win. These are guys that are willingly accept their role. And it's like a catcher in baseball. You don't get credit for anything, but you're absolutely critical. And Carson Cooper is probably one of the most important defensive players, maybe the most important defensive player for Michigan State, and it's a new role for him as well. And he's going to be big. He's going to be important once again against New Mexico, who has good guards. They have a good penetration. They do some good ball screen stuff. Donovan Dent is really good in ball screens, kind of like Tyson Walker was. He's quick with a dribble. He gets into the lane, and they're very good at hitting guys in the corner and that type of stuff. So this is going to be a huge game for Cooper. It's going to be a big game for Biggs helping out, and it's going to be a big game for Michigan State's guards defending. And against a New Mexico team that really is feeling good about itself after beating Marquette, feeling like they can beat anybody. And there's guys on that team that want to match up physically with Michigan State, and they want to take on the challenge of trying to run Michigan State because they're a team much like Bryant was last night. It was a good offensive rebounding team. This New Mexico team gets a lot of possessions, does a lot of good things in transition, and they're tired of hearing Richard Pitino talk about how the key to beating Michigan State is rebounding and transition defense because they think they're better than Michigan State is at running. And it'll be interesting to see. Once again, we talked about Bryant with that. Like, do you want to run with Michigan State? It's kind of hard to do that given Michigan State's depth, but I do think that New Mexico will try.
They better listen to Pitino on that. Before COVID, Michiganders were returning 90% of their bottles and cans. Since COVID, it's down to 73%. That means Michiganders are going without $105 million in bottle returns. Also, it's hurting our environment. So help the environment. Help yourself. It's your beaches, your roads. A message from Shoe Pan Recycling. Take them back. Take those bottles and cans back. It's worth your time. It's worth your dime. And everyone, it's worth a dime every time you do it. And everyone will benefit. Industry benefits, environment benefits. We all benefit. Take them back. A message from Shoe Pan Recycling. A great company dedicated to the Michigan State Spartans and dedicated to recycling. Shoe Pan Recycling. Now, if the Bryant players were warned about Michigan State's transition game, and Phil Martelli Jr. said after the game that as much as you look at it on film until you play against it, you don't realize how fast Michigan State is in transition. And Dusty May said the same thing. Michigan's coach, when he was getting ready to play Michigan State for the first time, he said he was talking to coaches around the league, and they say you won't know until you get on the court how fast it is. So Bryant's players listen to Martelli. Pitino's got a different communication rapport with his players, I think, than Martelli had with his. And if they think they can horse race with Michigan State, I think that'll work well for Michigan State. We talked about Dent last night a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And I thought your comparison was spot on about Tyson Walker. I don't know if many of you have not seen him play. Built very much like Tyson Walker. His ability to score going to the rim with some stop-and-go creativity and English and just creative ways to score is a lot like Walker going to the rim. Real nice step-back, medium-range jumpers, a lot like Walker. He could play Tyson Walker in a movie and do it really well. 40% shooter from three-point range, but he doesn't shoot it very often from three. It's crazy. 27 out of 66 He only has 66 attempts, 40%. He can ring it up. And this is a guy that scored 40 or 41 points against VCU, like 34, 35 against UNLV. He can score like Tyson Walker, does not shoot many three-pointers. He's only attempted 66 three-pointers on the year. Xavier Booker's attempted 73.
Yeah.
He hasn't attempted as many as Xavier Booker. I don't know why he doesn't, but New Mexico attempts the fewest three-pointers of any team in the Mountain West, and they make one of the higher percentages. They don't use the three a whole lot.
They're very specific on what they want to do. They like to use Dent as a penetrating guard, and they've got very specific assignments of who shoots threes. They like to get guards in the corner, shooting threes with Nolan and that Borovicinen.
Borovicinen shoots 31% from three. Nolan shoots 31% from three, and True Washington 35%.
But Nolan last night 3 for 3.
That's great. But Dent is 40%, and why he doesn't shoot more, it's fine. I mean, whatever they want to
maybe
do.
if he does shoot more, he doesn't make that many. But he knows where his bread is buttered, and he likes to get downhill. But that's their system. They love the corner three, and they like to get out in transition, and he's comfortable getting his shot off. The thing that always impressed me about like Tyson Walker is even when he gets in the painted area and he goes up against physical players, he's quick enough and his release is quick enough where he never let himself get bodied. And I saw the same thing. Him going up against Stevie Mitchell last night, one of the best defensive guards in the country. He did not let himself get pushed around. I didn't see very many instances. I mean, he's like that Barry Sanders type running back who never gets hit. It's a kind of a freakish thing, and you're expecting him to get drilled, but he never gets hit, and he's able to get stuff off before he's physically contacted. I was really impressed with that last night. I thought Stevie Mitchell was really good, and we talked last night, like before the end of that game, about Donovan Dent's got 7 turnovers, and he also, he finished with 7 assists or whatever, but
a couple of bad ones, too.
I'm hesitant, though, to judge a guy by that because I think the best point guard in the Big Ten this year is Braden Smith. And what happened when Michigan State played Braden Smith, the best point guard in the Big Ten? He had 7 turnovers. And, sometimes good defensive teams, and Stevie Mitchell's a really good defender, that was a tough task for Donovan Dent, just as playing Michigan State was a tough task for Braden Smith. But it doesn't make him a bad point guard. And I feel like the thing that I liked about Donovan Dent last night is, he had a tough night, but when it came time to take the game over, he absolutely did, and he was smooth and efficient about it. And he didn't do it in a way that was detrimental to his team.
Yeah.
He was a really good player.
He went from having a substandard performance for him 33 minutes into the game to taking over and looking like, an honorable mention All-American type. Medium range, to the rack, drive, draw, dish, all those things. Of the 7 turnovers, he had 2 or 3 that were just overzealous, as Al McGuire used to say, too much French pastry. Those type of turnovers. Braden Smith against Michigan State, I thought that Michigan State just kind of put him in jail a few times. But for Donovan Dent to just short memory and come back to be who he was, to carry them late, that was very impressive.
I think what they did with Braden Smith is they took away Kaufman-Wren, and they took away like some of the primary, like the inverted pick and roll that nobody takes away from Purdue, and that kind of frustrated Braden Smith. With his Donovan Dent, he's susceptible, I think, to some bad turnovers because of the amount of times he does one-handed passes. Mm-hmm. And when you're driving, it's impressive to me that he can do a one-handed pass and throw it as hard as he does and hit guys. But when you're driving against physical defenders and you're trying to pass one-handed and get it out of there as quickly as he does, you are going to have some misfires, and that was definitely the case against Marquette.
And of course, one of the differences between Donovan Dent and Tyson Walker is that Walker was an off guard. But sometimes in late shot clock situations, the ball would go to Walker, and Walker would create for himself. This guy's the point guard. He's got the ball in his hands all the time. That's one of the main differences. And he's a dazzling passer, 6 assists per game. He's the only player in the country that averages more than 20 points and more than 6 assists in the country. And, when he runs the pick and roll with Nelly Jr. Joseph, 6'10", transfer from Iona, really good Junior Joseph with the screen roll, just right down the middle, like Izzo was talking about today. When you've got to deal with the screen roll with a big guy like that can catch and finish. I started watching Junior Joseph, and I was wondering, okay, how good is he? Is he a little bit stiff? I kind of wonder if he's a little bit stiff. The more I watched it, no, he's not stiff. And he had a finish last night where he went to a Euro step to finish it up and in. 6'10", 11 rebounds a game, number 3 rebounder in the country. Those 2 guys are the battery up the middle, and then the guys that are around the supporting cast are supposed to be shooters. and they're kind of okay shooters at 31%. But on a given night, if they shoot 40%, most teams are going to have a problem with them. Junior Joseph's going to be good at the 5. I assume Zapala's going to start and start on him and give him a little something. And Michigan State will rotate big men on him. They've got fouls to give and try to wear him down in other ways. You talked to Cooper a little bit about him. Cooper will be guarding him some. They're 4-man. Amsel, 6'9". He's kind of a perimeter guy. 11 points per game. 5.5 rebounds, 28% from 3. Does Michigan State stay big against them? I'm sure they'll look at it, but do they go back and go small? This team won't stress them with a power forward who drives like Bryant had with either Evans, or the way they were positionless. They get a switch and they drive on Kohler. So, I think Michigan State's going to try to start with their usual rotation. And Zapala is going to play more than 3 minutes, I would think, unless things start to go haywire. What did Cooper say? What do you think about that matchup?
I talked to Junior Joseph for a while too. He was an interesting guy because he's been around for a long time. He's played 156 games of college basketball.
He played for Rick Pitino at Iona.
He started out. He was at Iona for 3 years. He was a Big Ten or that conference, whatever that conference is in. He was the freshman of the year that year. I think his first NCAA tournament game, he had something like, you would think he's raw, right? But he's not necessarily raw. His first NCAA tournament game for Iona, I think he had something like 11 points and 7 rebounds or something like that. So he's played this. This will be his 5th NCAA tournament game. So he's had experience with this. But he started out at Iona. He's been at New Mexico the last 2 years. So I don't think Rick Pitino is going to send a player to his son if he doesn't think he's a good player. And this year, Mountain West is a good conference, and they've had good bigs this year. Boise State has some good ones. Like San Diego State has a couple good ones, and there's some good personnel. But this year he was a really good shot blocker. But the way he finishes around the rim, he's got good hands. And I don't know if you've seen it a lot on film, but I'm telling you, when teams try to double him, he's really good, better than I expected for a small conference player to pass out of the post. But he's an experienced guy. I don't think he's going to be intimidated by Michigan State. I think he's, in talking to him, he's excited about this matchup because he played pretty good. He played really good against Marquette. He scored 19 points and had 6 rebounds against those guys. He was 7 of 10, from the floor. But he didn't like playing out in space all that much for an entire game when Marquette's bigs are basically hoisting threes. The Marquette, David Joplin and Ben Golden, they combined for 37 points or 38 points in that game. 7 of those points came inside the 3-point arc. All of Golden's points were outside the arc. And Joplin, he finished at 28 points. I think 21 of those points were from 3. So Junior Joseph is excited about playing a team that's going to be more, traditional pick and roll type stuff and in interior. And he's excited about not getting double teamed, I think. And I think he's.
Do you think Michigan State will double team? Will he command a double team?
I don't know. That's going to be really interesting. And I guess that all depends. That all depends on. The double team will only come, I think,
if he gets going,
or if he gets going. But if they're getting him the ball in a timely fashion, and we talk about the point guard being the head of the snake. I mean, one of the reasons why we talked about Donovan Dent so much is, Michigan State's been really good at taking away the point guard's ability to get the ball where he wants to go, and I think that's going to be a challenge. One of the other things I think is going to be a real challenge for Donovan Dent is the depth that Michigan State has. That's
the whole game.
If Michigan State is able to rebound and get out and transition, and they're going to, sprint baseline to baseline,
the whole game,
he is not going to be able to be the same player that he is. He played 32 minutes against Marquette. That was a soft 32 minutes because he didn't have to battle for rebounds necessarily. He didn't have to get the physical banging. He didn't have to sprint baseline to baseline.
That's the key.
So if Michigan State gets the defensive rebounds they need to run, and they get better than functional play from each of their bigs, Nelly Joseph is going to be negated by that strength in numbers to some extent.
100%. That's the whole defense. Like Al McGuire used to say, your offense becomes your defense. And we saw one of the more stark examples of that, NCAA tournament, I think 2007. Neitzel was a junior, a team that didn't have much. not much of a roster. Got to the tournament, beat Marquette in the first round, lost to North Carolina in the second round. It was in Winston-Salem, and I thought Michigan State, Izzo outcoached Roy Williams, but Williams had 12, 13 players. Neitzel was very good, but he was a big part of the team. And Neitzel had a lot of open shots that day, but North Carolina had 3 different defenders that they put on Neitzel. Neitzel had to go against a new defender every time. And if one guy had a 6-minute roll, 3 minutes in each half, he was in Neitzel as hard as he could, just hard for just 100%. And then a new guy come in 100%, and sometimes it was Lawson. So he had to deal with that, and he's the focal point. He would start the offense, then now he's coming off screens. And then change of possession, now he's got to bust ass because Ty Lawson's bringing it back at him, a younger Ty Lawson, at 110 miles an hour. And Neitzel, they got open shots for him. He had a really good game, but he was like 7 out of 24 or something like that. That happened to Braden Smith, having to get back on defense so much. Michigan State this year has that depth that they can racehorse on offense. Izzo wants to do it every year, but some years he doesn't have the depth to do it. This year he does. 94 feet, racehorse, make him go back and go. And then on defense, it's going to be Fears to begin with, then it's going to be Holloman. Then it's going to be Fears, then it's going to be Holloman. 20 minutes apiece, 2-headed defensive monster there. On switches, sometimes it'll be Akins. If he gets going, Akins might guard him a little bit. But that war of attrition is going to play defense against him as much as any half-court set of defense.
Yeah, and you look at Michigan State last year in defense, and Tyson Walker, before the wearing down effect that took place with him, and it did every year with him playing too many minutes or being on ball as much as he was and just doing the things that he had to do to get open. Michigan State had some good defensive players with Akins, Tyson Walker, and then Trey Holloman. This year there's no defensive weakness at the guard position. Each one of those guys, even Jace Richardson, is a better defensive player than a lot of people give him credit for, and he's very effective when he's fresh. But you look at Holloman, he's becoming a really, really good defender. Akins was on the all-defensive team this year. He's good, and he's been really good in certain matchups. I do think he spends a lot of energy. When he spends a lot of energy on defense, it really kind of hurts his offense and whatnot, but he's good, and that's the point. And you've got Colin Carr, who's also becoming pretty good on defense and versatile. This is the best group of guards defending that I've seen in my time covering Michigan State, and there's not one guard that you're like, oh, he can't handle this matchup. There hasn't been a single instance this year in a game that we've covered, and they've gone against some electric guards this year where I felt like, hey, Michigan State is going to get exploited or used by a guard. You think of Shellstat. He might have made some tough shots, the guy from Oregon, but it wasn't like he was blowing by anybody. They didn't get overpowered by anybody. I mean, Tanjay was good, and there were some explosive guys out there. The North Carolina guards were good, and they're explosive. But Michigan State wasn't getting out-athleted by anybody.
And part of some of those guards might have the ability to blow by a lot of people, a lot of teams, maybe even Michigan State in some circumstances, but not if they've been taxed the other way. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 35 minutes. And that's a key. As good as Dent is, and he is excellent. But in this game, what he has to do in transition defense is going to tax his gas tank a little bit. On a one-day prep, we'll see how he does. I thought it was key against Bryant when Michigan State tried to go fast. Fears just keeps getting faster and faster, pushing that break. Whether he's getting points out of it in early offense or not, making them go back. He's under control, on the dribble, pressing the pace there. That's a component that's gotten better and better as the season goes along. And with it, Michigan State has got a really good chance to beat New Mexico, really good chance to keep winning. Iowa State, Ole Miss, whoever comes out of the other bracket, Auburn. There's a game going on right now. Auburn's tied with Creighton. By the time people watch this, I don't know, but it's there. If State plays well and Akins shoots well, they can go to the Final Four.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things specific to this game that I think is going to be really important, I think Michigan State did a good job of taking care of the ball against Bryant. 7 turnovers in this game. One of the things that New Mexico does is they are going to apply some ball pressure out on the perimeter. They're going to challenge Michigan State, its guards a little bit out there, and turnovers, taking care of the ball. That's going to be a big thing. And I think if Michigan State can't take care of the ball, they can get downhill a little bit. I'm curious to see if some of the baseline stuff that appeared open against Marquette is actually open, or what Michigan State can do to get some, big-to-big passing and finish.
It wasn't open against Marquette. You're talking about the screen roll defense?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if some of the things that we've seen in other games instances.
Against Marquette, it didn't happen. They switched against Marquette.
Right. And they won't. And I talked to, like, one of the things that Junior Joseph said. He said that Michigan State is not going to get switched on. You know, like I don't know if he should have said that, but he was saying, "I'm looking forward to this game because we won't have to switch."
Other games, New Mexico does a hard hedge, help recover, and they do it out high. And watching some of those games, it just seems like they're a little bit tardy recovering back to the rim. And I didn't really see any teams really take advantage of it. But it seems like there's something there, and I was looking to see if they'd do it against Marquette. But against Marquette, they didn't do hedge, help, recover, and rotate. They just did straight switches everywhere, which is not what they normally do. But now there's indications, if they're telling the truth, that they're going to go back to playing the way they normally do. If they do the hard hedge, help, recover, we'll see if Michigan State can do things to beat that rotation.
If he's telling the truth, if he's not telling the truth, he's got the best poker, best poker face I've ever seen. But I will say this too. I felt like that when Richard Pitino was at Minnesota, there was lots of times where guys were up, that they were late in recovering, and that there was some leaks out there. I'm curious to see if they will try to run on Michigan State. Bryant was talking about wanting to run on Michigan State, not changing who we are. They got zero transition,
and they got back on defense a few times too. There's a lot of times they sent one to the board, which was not like them.
Yep. So that'll be interesting.
Which was smart.
That'll be interesting, but if New Mexico's going to beat Michigan State, I think it's got to be more than Donovan Dent and Junior Joseph. It's got to be a guy like True Washington, or the Nolan kid's got to get, he's got to keep on hitting threes from the corner. True Washington's got to be that a secondary penetrator in addition to Donovan Dent that can get guys in foul trouble. That's what it's gonna take. Junior Joseph can tell me like all he wants to about that he's played teams with deep front courts, but he's never played a team that runs as hard at that has forwards and centers sprint the floor as hard as Michigan State does, and it's going to be a difficult challenge, especially in an emotional environment, which the NCAA tournament is. Everything is kind of under the microscope. Carson Cooper did say to me, he was like, Phil Martelli was talking. This is kind of a secondhand story from Carson Cooper that he heard from his coaches after Phil Martelli was talking about Donovan Withers, the kid from Bryant, and he was saying that Withers wanted to go as hard as he could, but he just couldn't do it. With 10 minutes left, he had absolutely nothing left in the tank, and he was he just could not do anything that he wanted to do against Michigan State because he was absolutely gassed. And I did see that as well from when Alabama was playing, when they were playing Bob Morris and number 7, who is a pretty good Euro guy for Robert Morris. I mean, every single time there was a stoppage, he was bent over at the waist, grabbing his knees, and his teammates were like, "Hey, can you go? Are you okay?" And sometimes that happens. But Michigan State plays so hard, and that strength in numbers thing is real. And those guys are fresh, and a lot of these other guys that New Mexico, are not fresh. And it's going to be interesting to see if Michigan State can do to Robert Morris or do to New Mexico what they did to Robert Morris, or not Robert Morris, but to Bryant the other night. And I really think that there's a good chance that Michigan State will, by the time there's a 10-minute mark left there, that they will start pulling away because it is a physical team that's determined. And I do think having the test that they had against Bryant in that first half, it's going to pay dividends because these guys have now been there and experienced that and found a way to fight through it.
All right, so Michigan State looking to defeat New Mexico, go to the Sweet 16 for, the second time in 3 years. And that would be his 16th Sweet 16. We'll see if it happens. Michigan State's got a great chance to do it. New Mexico's good. I think Michigan State's primed to play better than good on Sunday. Just looking at the matchups, a good New Mexico team, but Michigan State with the numbers and that backcourt defense. Michigan State, I think, now is number 1 in the country in 3-point defense. They've always been a good defensive team, but some of that is what Withers experienced.
Yeah, and when you look at what they did, it's funny because we talk about the defensive stats, they're still looking at overall stats. But when you look at what Michigan State has done in the Big Ten, I mean, that's even better than the overall. So now they're like the overall leader in 3-point percentage defense. But when you look at what they've done in the Big Ten, what they've done in the last, the last 20 games, it's crazy. Part of that is Cohen Carr becoming a better defensive player. Part of that is Carson Cooper actually, he struggled coming in the first half of the year. He really came on strong throughout the Big Ten season. Jace Richardson getting better, but Cohen Carr getting better. And the communication when Cooper's out there, when he's playing well, the communication goes up and there's a lot more talking. with the amount of rest that these guys have had over the course of the season, as these other teams keep on, banging their heads in the wall, playing a lot of minutes, Michigan State's going to be better on defense because they're fresher. There's nobody averaging like an unsustainable number of minutes on this team.
It was a little more constricted in the last game because Zapawa only played 3 minutes. I think that could expand back a little bit. Depends on the opponent. Didn't play as many minutes, as many players in the last game. But that's, you always expect to shorten your bench a little bit in March anyway. The timeouts are a little bit longer. So we'll see what happens. Michigan State's in good shape to move on against New Mexico. They have to produce, of course. Donovan Dent's going to be an interesting one. True Washington, X factor as a guard. That's the type of guy that I'm guessing Akins might guard, and I think Washington could have be a little bit below his numbers in that matchup.
He runs hot and cold. I think Akins is going to give him a problem because Akins isn't going to get intimidated or bullied by someone trying to drive him, and that's what True Washington's tough when he's trying to drive, but Michigan State's they've been really good at dribble penetration, and True Washington did some good things against Marquette. Michigan State's got better personnel, better defensive personnel than Marquette has. Stevie Mitchell's a great defensive player, but there's some other guys that are weak links and defensively in the backcourt for Marquette, in my opinion.
I might be wrong. Akins with a little more size in the backcourt might be taking Nolan when he comes into the game, or Mustafa Amzil, although he's got some size. And Bono Vickerman, the guy from Finland, he's got some size too.
Yeah,
so probably put Akins on one of those two guys.
Borovichinen's kind of I don't want to say dirty player, but he reminds me of like one of those European hockey players that gets away with slashing once in a while. He is kind of like he started out at Arizona. He's got some face-up game, and when he's on. Amzil, he didn't do anything last night.
No, 11 points per game, 5.5 rebounds. I know he's productive. I've not really seen it.
What he reminds me of is
he'll drive a little bit.
What he reminds me of is that dude that at Oregon, the four-man that he's averaging 10 points, but against Michigan State he hasn't done anything. But in other games he's scoring 3 or 4 points, or 3 or 4 threes. We haven't seen that from him when Michigan State plays him. But I think he's one of those four-men that he's not a consistent source of perimeter shooting, but he can be, and that
he leads the team in 3-point attempts at 139, but he only shoots 28% from three. 11 points per game. I've seen a couple of games. I know his stats are good, like you're saying. I've not really seen it. I saw him drive a few times, so I've not witnessed what he is at his best.
And I felt like when he was in the game, when him and Borovicinen when Borovicinen and Amzil were in the game at the same time, I felt like that was when Joplin was able to drive most effectively, because I think they did a really good job. New Mexico did a really good job of keeping Marquette out of the paint for the most part. But when Amzil was in the game, Joplin, those 7 points I mentioned that he got from inside the arc, those were on drives, and I think they're pretty much exclusively against Amzil, where he just took him off the dribble and got to the rim. And Michigan State is better at penetrating. They've got a lot of different guys that can drive. So if I'm Richard Pitino, I'd be really wary of having Borakainen or Borovicinen, whatever the heck his name is, and Amzil in the game at the same time. I'd also wonder too. Like I asked Nelly Joseph about this. I said, okay, you got a whole bunch of international players on the team. I was like, how do you guys communicate defensively when everyone's when everyone's language, English is your second language? And he was like, well, you play together a lot. And you didn't give me a good answer, but I've always wondered that I think it's cool that they've got a lot of international guys on their team, but I just wonder sometimes if defensively it's, when you got a bunch of guys that can penetrate, if it's hard to communicate with a lot of different international players on the floor.
Yeah, I think they're pretty strong with their English.
Yeah. I mean, most of them. Most of them are pretty good. I just wonder sometimes about that.
Yeah, and it was something that Michigan State has had. It's taken time with guys when they were freshmen, going all the way back to Erasm Lorbeck and Sissoko a little bit early in his career.
But I honestly feel like Zapala is probably in some ways like his language skills are, Nelly Joseph he's pretty good, but I can see some language barriers there. I don't think that's going to be a problem. They've got a lot of good players. They played together and they've done it at a high level for New Mexico. They have an interesting roster, and I wonder. That just kind of struck me when I was watching them. Interesting roster, and I wonder if you'll see more of that. Throughout college basketball.
Michigan State fans were great here on Friday night. We talked about this when we left the arena, and I was going back to other NCAA tournament sites. other than when they played at the Palace in 2000 and Little Caesars Arena, even though they lost at Syracuse that one year. I thought it was the loudest I've heard of Michigan State crowd in an NCAA tournament game outside the state of Michigan. You know, they were in Columbus a few years ago, and it was pretty good. And there have been other times in Indianapolis, but when they've been in Indianapolis, you've had Louisville fans or other assortments of fans, and sometimes the arena is really big. I thought that was the best. I've been doing this for, since 1998 in terms of Michigan State making the NCAA tournament. I thought Friday night was the best showing of Michigan State fans I've ever seen in a Michigan State NCAA tournament game. Maybe I need to get my memory jogged. We talked about it. I almost wanted to go back and go through every game to make sure that there wasn't one that I forgot about. But as of right now, I thought the Friday night Michigan State's fans here were the best I've seen.
Yeah, I think it was really good. And one thing I would say is that's going to be an issue too, because I felt like there was times where Michigan State fans willed their team, because I think the Michigan State fans are pretty much are pretty well, they're educated to what Michigan State does. So like there's an appreciation level, and I've said this going back to at the Breslin Center, when a guy's diving on the floor for a loose ball, when someone's getting an offensive rebound and kicking it out to someone else, and yeah, the guy might miss a shot, but you get another offensive rebound. There's a frenzy amongst Michigan State fans that kind of instead of groaning because the guy misses an open three, they're cheering the effort to get the offensive rebound, and I think that is very helpful. I will say though, New Mexico, for the distance that they traveled, they had a really they did a really good job of getting that fan base out there. This section over next to your left here was filled with New Mexico people. That Lobo basketball tradition going back to the 90s, when they had that thing rolling. I think they went to six straight NCAA tournaments. They had a lot of good coaches. They're producing a lot of talent back then. But there's a lot of New Mexico fans that are really excited about this team, and they've been gone the last 2 years. And they've got a team that is fun to watch, in my opinion. And they were very vocal last night. It's not gonna it's not gonna do much to Michigan State. It's gonna be the equivalent of Michigan State fans at a U of M game, where the go green, go white chants go. Michigan State's going to be powered on by their fan base. But I was really impressed with New Mexico fans, and I was really impressed with how they've done this in Columbus, or not Columbus, but in Cleveland. This has been a fun little area to cover.
You would think that, and there were a few thousand Marquette fans too. They travel well. They got a good program. They're all gone home. So those Marquette fans that bought tickets for Sunday on the market, I would imagine Michigan State fans fill in that Marquette, because no one's going to be flying out here from New Mexico now.
Right.
But Michigan State fans from Michigan, from Ohio. I meant to check SeatGeek to see what tickets are going for before we started this, but I didn't. I forgot. But I would expect, as good as it was on Friday, I think it's going to be even better.
Yeah, and I don't
Sunday.
know. I don't really see a lot of. We've been around the arena. I don't know if there's an area around the arena where you could buy scalp tickets. But some places, like for the NCAA tournament, it's hard to find a scalp ticket. I haven't seen really many.
It's all digital.
Right. So I don't.
It's all secondary, third, the digital market, SeatGeek, and all that stuff. So that's where the tickets are, and there's going to be some demand. I'm expecting a lot of Michigan State fans here, and I think it's going to be a great environment, a great send-off for Michigan State if they can get this done. It's going to be interesting. We'll see what happens. Anything else, Paul? For Paul Kodak, my name is Jim Comper. I've been watching the VCast from Cleveland, Ohio, Rocket Arena with the Spartans for SpartanMag.com.